question. Are there other funding avenues that a church can consider other than the tithes and offering? So I would like to throw this question to amiable Pastor Omo, to take on this first question, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much, Pastor Olumide. Yes, just like you rightly mentioned, tithes and offerings, are like the standard model for financing churches. And I'm sure you all, or maybe a lot of people will not quite realize that it's tithe and offering are actually a tiny fraction of the income, of the churches, as it would attend to the needs. And so we have to basically always consider other sources of income to augment the expenses that the church always has to carry, or the several roles and responsibilities. And these, in order for all that as a church to thrive. And these can be in different forms, to include different courses, that we could look towards that could generate incomes. It could be health services, there could be things that can help underserved, less the poor. They could include mission trips, that could help with evangelism and the preaching of the gospel. There are things that would include anything that has to do with the community support and youth group activities, special programs, events, to include trainings, to include empowerment programs and community outreaches, and anything that has to do with care services as well, for children, for women, for the elderly, for the widows, and any vulnerable category, and things especially that are dear to the community that you are in or that the church is in, and the government is trying to push to help, its citizens. And then, of course, we could also consider having like a registered business arm of the church as also as an avenue, and grants and partnerships, with other faith-based organizations, or organizations who have some money out there to give, and for which they need people who could be the foot soldiers to run with their vision. And of course, we can look into investments, we can look into rentals, business space, event space, sports facilities, and promotional tech services, and just in addition, even what comes into church. We should also be intentional about the kind of bank accounts that we have as a church, and looking towards considering placing a portion of our church savings or checking account money into interest-bearing accounts. And so these are just a few of the services.
Wow. Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, she just said a few of them has been said. As I was writing, I've written over 8 of them. And you can do investments, you can do collaboration with organizations, you can do rental services, you can do a number of things. She highlighted quite a number, and hopefully I hope you're writing something down. But I believe there are other avenues, like she rightly said. So I'm going to invite Pastor Kunle. Are there other avenues that you would like to touch on, just like Pastor Mo has given us a quick insight into some of them? Over to you, sir. Pastor Kunle. Yeah. Okay, I guess Pastor Kunle.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pastor Olumide. It's my pleasure to be here. I have only 2 minutes, and I'll just try and add as much as I can to the volume of what has already been said. I believe that the primary responsibility of the church is to equip the saints to operate at their optimal capacity. That's our primary responsibility. And it's in with us to ensure that the fellowship is sustained by people. The funding of the union actually should come primarily from tithe and offering. That's what the Bible says in Malachi 3:10. So my own philosophy, actually, as a person, has always been to build the capacity of the givers and motivate them to give what they have. How do I do that? We primarily have a Brothers Keepers team, and their job is to educate the givers continuously about emerging markets and let them get into sectors of new growth in the economy ahead of everybody else. If they jump into it before it gets crowded, there's a tendency that they will get a better share of it. And we also provide relevant professional trainings to augment them. I primarily believe that in our culture, different kinds of businesses in the church could be very dangerous. I believe that the most important responsibility of leaders and pastors is to anticipate and to see further and farther. And if you have a leader that can anticipate, it gives the people an advantage. It allows them to get ahead of emerging opportunities before the opportunities get crowded. And if you can do that, there's a tendency that you will have a bunch of people that are extremely gifted to give. If you increase the people's income, your funding will increase. There's only one investment that can go into at the church, and that's real estate. That's because, and there's a lot, I can't say all that in 2 minutes. That's because it doesn't really require human contact. You can invest and increase your assets without really having to have your people themselves. I really would not do any other business as a church. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Kunle. Thank you so much. I think he has touched on a very important aspect, which is empowerment. Empowering members of the church, strengthening their skill set, encouraging training, creating avenue for training, so that if they are individually empowered and they get rich, of course, they also will have the opportunity to give. Thank you for also mentioning something about real estate. So quickly, before we go away from this aspect, I just want Pastor Leke to touch on one or two things that he thinks is also can be an avenue for church funding. Pastor Leke, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Lumide. I think the bulk of the discussions have been handled by Pastor Mo and Pastor Doge, but I will just add one or two things. The best thing for a pastor to do is to scan your environment and know where your strengths are. You want to really know what you have and what you can play with. A lot of us don't know that we already have what it takes to generate income. The asset that you are arranging is a big one. A lot of our assets are lying underutilized and idle. How can I invest $1 million in a property that I use for 4 hours in a week? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a gross underutilization of grace. If you have a $1 million property and you cannot scan what you can use it for in your environment and generate good income. So we need to first assess what we have. We have intellectual assets, we have property assets. Intellectual assets are the one that you have within your membership, like Pastor Doge said. Empower the people that are yours in that house. That's your intellectual asset. They are the biggest generator of income. Motivate them, get involved in their lives. Let them know that you're motivating them is not for the selfish reason of growing the church. It's also for growing their capacity to earn further income for themselves and their family. That's your intellectual asset. Every parish has that. You don't have to be a mega parish to have that. You can be 30 people, and if you can manage it very well, you can generate a lot of money, more than 100 or 3,000 people. So by the time you engage those people, you partner with them and you let them know, lay it bare the vision of the church, and let them know that, of course, funding is very necessary. 90% of people that come to church knows what we use the money for. You don't need to kill them with Malachi chapter 3, and that cause with a cause. You don't need to intimidate them with death. God has given them life. Tell them what you need money for, and be sincere. People respond with sincerity, and you will get money. How can I have a building and there are tons and tons of young people working in my neighborhood, and they want somewhere to keep their children and they don't have? I can give them generous discounts and they will come and I will get good income. Passive income. You can generate a lot of passive income. There are people that believe it is demonic for a church to invest in stock. It's not demonic. There's nothing demonic about investing in stock. It's just doing it right and getting the right broker and following the rules of the non-profits to do it. You will generate money. There's nothing wrong with generating passive income from rents. You can do all those things. There are people that want to do fitness in your neighborhood, and all you need is just get one or two rooms that you use for children church 2 hours a week and lease out to them, and they will generate income for you. There are tons of making money. I will just leave it at that so that I will know you more than 2 minutes.
Wow, thank you so much. That was deep. You said we should stop intimidating people with Malachi. Wow, that was a deep one for me. It's like wisdom is profitable. SWOT analysis. What are your strengths? Intellectual assets, property asset. You have intellectual asset, develop them. There's so much I think has just been said in such a short time, but we're not going to overflow this topic. I'll pass it on to my co-host, Pastor Bumi, to go on with the other aspect of the question. Thank you so much. Pastor Bumi, over to you.
Thank you, Pastor Fatokun. And thanks to all the panelists who answered. Those were amazing points. I just kept on writing, and I see that the points are also written in the different platforms. So thank you so much for all those points and avenues. Now, my next question I'll pose to Pastor Leke. Pastor Leke, as the special assistant to the Continental Overseer in charge of finance and help desk, I will basically ask that during the pandemic, many governments actually provided some kind of disaster relief and intervention to mitigate the financial impacts of COVID-19. However, it was unfortunate that some of our parishes could not latch onto this. And this was as a result of the structure of their organization. Pastor Gandhi had alluded to it that some did not have payroll on paper. Now, when we look at all of this, in order to address these structural deficiencies, we need to look at a few areas that churches can improve to be able to take advantage of the opportunities at their disposal. So the question I'm posing basically is, what is the procedure for accessing grants and financial assistance from the government?
Thank you very much. There are several sources. But we need to put the house in order first. If the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? That's what the Bible says. My people perish for lack of knowledge. The problem is not with lack of resources, and even the problem is not with lack of information about resources. The problem is that we are never prepared for most of these things, and we need to first get down to putting the house in order. On what basis will you run an organization, whether it's church or not, whether it's for profit or non-profit, and you don't have a payroll system? You see, the most pathetic part of it is that this point that we're even saying, we said it in the first round of the PPP check. After 70% of our parishes missed it, we raised an awareness about it. And the second PPP came, and they still missed it. So that's an attitudinal problem. It's no longer a shortage of information. It's now an attitudinal problem. It's like, why should I do payroll, all those things? I'm going to heaven, and I don't know the correlation between heaven and payroll. You understand what I'm saying? So we need a lot of education to put the house in order first. When we now put the house in order, it now behoves on us to give information about available resources. You see, I'm not going to deal with you if your house is not in order. Even if I have information, it's not useful to you. Let's have the right policy environment, whereby we know when you start a church within a particular space of time, there are some basic things you must have. You must have quick books. And you must not just have quick books, you must have it quickly. Because if you don't have quick books, how are you going to track your expenses? How are you going to track your income? And these guys that give you funding, SBA and all these organizations, they want information. So if you don't track the information, how are you going to tell them? You see, the people that have put their house in order, they pursue them with money. For instance, even if you don't have payroll, there is the EIDL. There is the advanced EIDL. I mean, we have about 3 organizations, 2 non-profit, 1 for-profit. The one that is the second non-for-profit, apart from our parish, just started within a couple of months before the pandemic. So we didn't have personnel, so there's no need for payroll. But because we have structured it, we have the 501c3. The SBA could deal with us on the EIDL level. They first advanced us $1,000. Then after a while, they wrote us a letter themselves that they were supposed to give us $10,000. And we didn't need to do anything than what we have originally done. They sent 9,000. I didn't need to go and pray and fast to get that one. They sent it to me. Okay, a couple of months after, they now wrote again. They said there's an advanced EIDL. I said, what do I need to do? They said, all that you needed to do, you have done. They're going to send you another 5,000. Wow. I didn't need to cast out any devil. And I received 15,000. So I can now use that to fund my food pantry in the community. Because I'm using that to fund the food pantry in the community, it triggered the attention of my city. My city called me into a meeting and said, we have seen trucks coming in and out and all those stuff. What can we do to partner with you? So the fund has moved away from SBA now. It has now moved to the city. So they have a particular plot of land very close to us that we are trying to buy. They said, no, we will not sell land to an organization like yours. We would rather give it to you and partner with you in order to do things that will not only generate income for you, but that will be a blessing to our community. We need to start engaging our communities. If you don't, I mean, how can you be pastoring a church in the city and you don't know the mayor?
That's right.
I mean, there's something absurd about it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so those are things that we can do. First, position yourself for money to look for you. You don't need to look for money when you are well positioned.
All right.
Money will look for you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Ella.
Thank you, sir. Now, Pastor Omo, the reason for this question, which has been alluded to by Pastor Leke, is that we are lacking, some churches are lacking in areas such as payroll and filing taxes. They pay for services on the side rather than actually properly documenting some of these expenses. Now, these habits can disqualify them from accessing so many grants like Pastor Leke has alluded to. However, when we listen to Pastor Gandhi's message, he mentioned that the church got about 24,000 in grants, which was used for the community. Pastor Leke has also alluded to the fact that his church works and helps the community as well. So I would like you to tell our churches what procedures are in place for accessing these grants, if there are any of those that Pastor Leke might not already have mentioned. Pastor Omama.
Thank you very much. I think Pastor Leke has done an extensive job, and there really isn't too much to add to it. He's really done so well. But however, we know that we have different categories of people, and some of our churches might not even really have knowledge. Is key for them to understand, where we're coming from and what are grants basically, and why, how and if they qualify for these. And so it's for them to know that, these are monies that are set aside, through the government or by the government or through charitable organizations that can be taken advantage of or can be accessed by the community to include faith-based organizations like ours, the churches. And they come to us and they are not meant to be repaid. So they are meant to be used, to develop the community and to help the needs of the members of the community. And so these can be used for different aspects of what our visions, our missions, our objectives, and our goals are as organizations or as a church. And so you need to be eligible for these grants. And these grants speak to different aspects. It's not one size fits all. So you just must know what it is that you are doing as a church, or what your beliefs are, what your goals are. And so you then have to go in search of the organization that will meet your need. And thereby you have to find out, that some of them will service churches that are maybe 100 and membership is maybe 150 members and below. So if you fall within that category, then you quickly go in search. And then you also need to know what these organizations or what the government is talking about at that point in time. What is that dire need in their hearts, that they are trying to meet? It's just like we had the COVID-19. Some of them needed to be vaccination centers. So there are different things that are current. And so we just must be strategic to the needs of government, because we must act as agents, of our government. And as such, what I want to say to us is, you in order to access it, there are application forms that you need to fill. And there are also links or different government organizations. You fill the application forms, and just like Pastor Leke mentioned, they will ask questions on that application forms of things that they require from you. And first and foremost, you just must have a 501c3 status at the minimum in order to access that.
Thank you very much, Ma. Now I'd like to pass it on to Pastor Adewale. Just a different perspective, since you're a young adults and singles ministry pastor. So I just wanted to find out if you had any addition to procedures for accessing grants. Pastor Adewale.
I think a lot has been said, and what I think I can just add to it is that I think for smaller churches, sometimes we think we may not have resources, but I think sometimes we may not know that people within our churches can be very helpful. So I would say that at any level of church that we are doing, we should know our people, know where they can come in and help us with things, because some of these things that we are throwing out here, some people may think that, well, I need to get a professional to come and help me set some of these things up. Some of the people in our churches, this is what they do every day. That's one of the reasons why, as a pastor, you must be very interested in your people and kind of know where they are, so that you may be able to leverage some of their expertise that are outside the church. You'll be surprised if you reach out. In fact, sometimes if you even mention within the church that, if anybody knows areas where we can be of help in the community in this pandemic season, please talk to us in the church office or talk to any of the pastors. You'll be surprised what you can get from there. So I like to add that our people are a great asset to us. No matter the size of the church we have, we can leverage them, and they may be able to help us even with some of these paperwork and some of these getting organized that we need to do. Some of our people may be able to help us.
Thank you very much, sir. That's even with the bookkeeping, the reporting, and all of that. Thank you so much, sir. Before I pass it on to my co-anchor, I would like to let those who are viewing from our different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and the like, if you have questions, please put it in the chat room. We have representatives to send us the questions, and we'll have our panelists answer those questions. With that said, I would now like to pass it on to my co-anchor, Pastor Fatokun. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Pastor Wumi. I've been learning a lot from this discussion, but I'm going to take this discussion further. Now, there's something I keep getting. There's power in numbers. There's power in numbers. I've seen some, Pastor Lake has alluded to, we need to get our house in order. But there's some thoughts coming to my mind, which I'm going to pose as some questions here. Powers in number. Are there some collaborations that churches can engage in to generate additional streams of income? Collaborations between ourselves. You see a number of redeemed churches. Is that a way where we can collaborate, that we can get other sorts of income when it comes to church funding? And also, when we talk about collaboration, are there other multiple churches can come together to partner in a venture that can generate incomes, collaboration, or coming together in ventures? And there are risks associated as well. And what are the benefits or conditions needs to be set? So I know I've asked 3 questions in one: collaboration. Should we encourage it? If we encourage it, what are the benefits? What are the ventures that we are coming to? I'd like to start off with Pastor Mo. Ma, what do you think about collaboration between churches as a way of getting funding? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I would like to mention, thanks a lot, that just like you mentioned, there's a lot of strength in collaboration, which a lot of us do not seem to realize, because there are certain things that you might not be able to do as one church that you can do by collaborating with organizations or even with other churches, by them coming together. And it is so possible, and it is a beautiful possibility. So there are different instances, things that you cannot do by yourself. You can decide to take on different courses. You can decide what are the needs, the inherent needs. I always want to refer to the community, go beyond your church. And so you can collaborate, maybe computer training, it could be health services, and you can use, the resources within your church, the human resources within your church to achieve it. You might have a lot of nurses or medical personnel, and you want to then make free medical services available at certain times of the month, to members of the public who do not have insurance or who might not be able to afford it. And you can, through this collaboration, there are some organizations out there who have the money, but they do not have the resources, and they are looking for people who will drive it. And so if you are a church that can drive it and you have the resources available, go for it. And you can have a daycare, you can have a school, you can have a thrift store, that you can have a sports complex, like we said, that you could use by collaborating. You can collaborate professional. There's a church, for instance, in Illinois that we attended once. Their church facility outside of Sunday services is used for professional basketball, and basketball stars come in and they use it. So they collaborate with that organization as well, to help fund their church. And so we can make our churches available and come together to serve that purpose. And I want us to also know that we must make sure that it is within the confines of our 501c3, that the goal in all of it is not just to make money, because church is not business. Church is service to the people and to the community. So whatever it is that we are doing must be to serve the community and the people that God has placed under our care.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much. Wow. That's powerful. We can collaborate. Talking about collaboration, are there room for Redeemed Church to collaborate in developing streams of income? If 5 Redeemed churches within a zone, can they do something together that will channel funding, or how can they collaborate? Are there risks in that? Because operating in silos seems to create a lot of challenges for different churches. But when we come together and we have a common objective, churches within our zones, can we collaborate? I would like to have your input, sir, Pastor Adewale, on this room for collaborations within ourselves.
Thank you very much. I believe that it's in order, and we should leverage on our size, and we should leverage on the fact that we have a common vision and common goal. But like you said, that will there be risk in some of this collaboration? Of course, where there is human relationship and human beings involved, you can bet that there will be some issues there. So I think we should try as much as possible to stick to things that bind us together as much as possible. And like Pastor almost said the other time, that church is not really necessarily for making money per se. We should also look at ourselves as service people, and in fact, I would say that our collaboration should start from there. How do we together develop our people? For example, some people may not look at this, our seminar, as that, but this is a collaboration. This is some level of increasing our mind, our brain capacity to be able to accommodate new streams of income. So I would also call this some level of collaboration. So if we have zonal meetings, we have provincial meetings, of course, it would be nice to have people come and talk of opportunities that are available out there and which we can do together, but we should still stick as much as possible to the vision and try as much as possible to focus more on people development as much as we can. And then maybe as a church, I would advise that we don't overly go into that old very business nature of things. I mean, if we have other organizations for profit, we can be very more aggressive there. But on the church platform, I would say that our focus should be more on service and more on people development than on the dollars and cents and all of that kind of thing. So the more we focus on that, I think, like Pastor Leke alluded to the other time, some fundings will begin to come into us from there. So I think if we focus on people building and service giving out, we should be able to have some things going on there.
Wow. Thank you so much, Pastor Adewale. What I'm taking from here today is that you position yourself for money to look for you. If we better collaborated, if we put our house in order, we don't need to look for money to do service for community. The money will come to us to do service to the community. That's how the church is positioned. So on that note, I'm just going to pass it on to my co-host, Pastor Bumi, to continue from here as we go into the second segment of this discussion, which is about financial reporting. Pastor Bumi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Fatukun. Now on financial reporting, this question I'll pose to Pastor Fikayo. Pastor Fikayo, you're a parish pastor, and in talk 1, when we're listening to Pastor Gandhi, he had mentioned that the church needs to maintain relevance in the community and also within. Now we know that transparency builds trust and commitment among church members. When we look at some churches, especially the non-African churches, we see some level of accountability where the church leadership details their expenses, their income periodically. Some might be quarterly and some might be annually. And it shows what came in, what went out, what was spent, and what is remaining, pretty much what can be used for projects and the likes. And this encourages church members to give more. So It is therefore important to discuss what is too little or too much in terms of financial reporting. So my question to you is, how accountable does a church leader have to be when presenting financial reports to the church? Pastor Fikayo.
Okay, thank you for having me. How accountable and transparent should we be? I would say as much as is humanly possible, especially to the immediate congregation. I've even gone as far as presenting receipts of expenditure so that people not only know what was spent on, how much was spent on each item and each expenditure. So it's extremely important that we be as accountable and as transparent as is humanly possible. And why? Because we are in a generation and a culture that is highly cynical. People absolutely want to believe the worst. And cynicism and skepticism is the religion of the contemporary person. So it doesn't really take much these days to erode your witness. Just a little bit and you're done. You're canceled, as it were. And so, you know, I would say, you know, I have a thought. I have a couple of thoughts, but I have at least one that I want to share on how we can be better at this. And I say a thought because I don't presume to be able to, I don't pretend any expertise, especially not in this area. And I've thought long and hard as to how it is I've come to sit in this panel with these heavy. Champion. And, and the only thing that has come to mind is that I'm here to learn and to stand on the shoulders of great people. So I'm okay with that. But I'll posit this thought that each church should have a functioning and authoritative board or board system. Now, of course, every church or most churches have boards, but do the board really have the authority, for example, to veto the pastor's proposal? And so on and so forth. So that's extremely important. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 12. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 to 12. Verse 9 says, two are better than one. They have a good reward for their labor. Verse 12 says that a threefold cord is not easily broken. If one person can make a financial error, then a group of people, it's less likely that that will happen. At New Song, we have a board that ratifies the budget for the year. We go into that budget, we execute the budget. If anything happens during the course of the year that takes us away from the budget, we reconvene the board and ask if it's okay to extend ourselves, even if we do have the money. And if there's no consensus, then we stay put. So I think that's extremely important, and it helps us stay the path to being accountable and transparent.
Thank you very much, Pastor Fikayo. Now, the next question, which is the same question, actually, I'll pass it on to Pastor Leke, because now I want those who are logging in and joining us from different platforms to understand that the avenues that we have discussed and the reporting that we have discussed is not just for, you know, big churches. So if I am a small parish, what are the steps that I can take in order to ensure proper reporting? Pastor Leke.
Yeah, the proper reporting is an ethical thing. It's not a matter of size. You know, if you look at Matthew chapter 25 from verse 14 to 30, where the Bible talks about the parable of the talents, it was actually talking more about accountability. Different servants are given different, you know, talents, but the same demand was placed on them. So regardless of whether you were given 1 talent or 2 talents or 5 talents, the master was expecting delivery from you. each according to his ability. So he did not overload them with what they could not handle. So it's the same thing. So if you're a small church, the basic bookkeeping is there, but it might be a Herculean task for a church that is just starting. That's the beauty of belonging to an organization like ours, where we have the zonal structure, the province structure, and what have you. What I do in my province, for instance, is that I engage the resources available in the province headquarters to help the churches under me. So I have my CPA that I can now encourage to give services for people to set up basic payroll and basic QuickBooks to track expenses and revenues. And we look at them and look at the time that we can give that pro bono service. And we give them a plan that they will now exit from the pro bono season to when they can afford to now pay for that service. I think that's the benefit of being in Redeemed. That's why I'm in Redeemed. Things I cannot do on my own, I have bigger churches that can provide service. So we can use that collaborative effort, take advantage of size, economies of scale. Let the people that have help the people that cannot be able to provide, so that at least they can start and they start seeing the benefits of keeping adequate records. In this case, records speak volumes. Records indicate who you are. The marketplace assesses you based on your record keeping, not based on how much tongue you can speak. You know, we need to be able to know all these things. It's not everything that we have to spiritualize. There are things that we must put in place as a matter of law and as a matter of regulation, so that the world out there will engage with us as a business organization and do business with us.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for those questions, sir. Now I'd like to pass on the next question to be asked by my co-uncle, Pastor Fatogun. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Bumi, and thank you, Pastor Leke, for that passion about it. I picked something from Pastor Fikayo about when a very cynical culture, very skeptical, the people try to keep receipts. But there's some of the questions I would like us to answer, if that's okay. Now, a lot of churches experience challenges that stems from poor bookkeeping. Some churches cannot adequately account for money spent on projects. Now, how do you think the church bookkeeping should be handled? What's your take when it comes to outsourcing the church bookkeeping? Would it be beneficial to hire a professional, like Pastor Leke alluded to? And also, what's your take when it comes to issue of external auditing when it comes to church funding? So I'm going to invite Pastor Adewale, sir. What's your take when it comes to this outsourcing the church bookkeeping?
Thank you very much, sir. I really think that this discussion we're having is all about stewardship of the resources that God has given to us. You know, as individuals, as a church, God expects us to be good stewards. And really, the way it works, like Pastor Leke talked about, is that if you are faithful with little, more will be committed into your hands. So sometimes when people are thinking that they don't have enough, most times it's because they've not kept what they have been given well, so much so that they'll be given more. So it's a capacity issue. So I would say that when it comes to bookkeeping, from the get-go, you need to understand that stewardship, you have to be a good steward of these resources that God has given to you, no matter how little you think it is now. And if you have that kind of perspective, you can start where you are. You know, and Pastor Leke talked about the fact that because we're in an organization like this, we can leverage other churches. And I would even add to it that because of technology and the way the pandemic has even shown us, it shows that we can get resources all over the world now. You know, even the book, QuickBooks that Pastor Leke was mentioning. I know that I think when we started, we were even able to get something very like $50 a month to have some small quick books, and then you link it up with your bank account, and you'll be able to tag expenses, you know. And some of these things can even be done with a very lean staff that maybe somebody that is doing something else within the organization can do that. And then as we begin to grow, I think those things should begin to grow with us. You know, the stewardship needs to grow into the place where if you know you can afford to bring a staff to manage that, you need to do that, you know. And then, of course, I think that when it comes to external auditing and people looking, external people looking at your books, I think some of those things even naturally will happen at some other levels of the growth of the organization. For example, if you want to get a building, I know most banks will not just even want you to just present your books by yourself. They will want somebody certified to do that. So, of course, I think it's in order for us to open up auditing to external auditors so that we can also find areas where we can eliminate waste. Like Pastor Gandhi said in his message, he said, when this pandemic, one of the things that has shown us is that we may not be getting a lot of money per se, but we can reduce our expenses, because when it comes to finances, it's not only income, you know, that is all about finances. The management of that income is also there. So if we can eliminate waste, and if auditing will help to do that, to show some of the areas where we have a leakage or some of the areas where we can plug, I think that's very, very in order.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So from what I'm getting also is that auditing is important. It helps us to eliminate waste. If you reduce your waste, your income will actually increase because you're not spending too much. But still talking about the issue of accountability, talking about the issue of reporting. I remember Pastor Fikayo said something that we should have a functioning authoritative board in place. So that brings me to this question. When there are issues with the church finances due to misappropriation of funds, or maybe a funding opportunity gone wrong, who should handle the issue? Who should be the one to communicate this issue, and to whom should the church report to? So these are very, very sensitive issues, particularly when we're in a world where there's a lot of skepticism and cynicism. Pastor Lekesa, what do you think when it comes to handling issues, when it comes to misappropriation of fund?
Yeah, you're not going to a more legal side of it, because when it comes to fraud, your title does not count. Yeah, your title doesn't count, your ordination doesn't count, and all those things don't count. The law has to move in and take its course. So when there is a report of misappropriation, the law governing the registration of every church in each state dictates the best way to handle it. And the Internal Revenue Service also has regulations for that. So talking about the state, each church is governed by a board, and the board is the highest authority on matters like this. So each board should be organized in such a way that there are subcommittees that will handle different things within the gamut of the whole board activities. And part of, like in our church, we have a finance committee, you know, so if there's a report of a misappropriation, it will be referred to the board. So whether the board will escalate from there now depends on the nature of the fraud and the impact on the assets of the church. Don't forget that the assets of the church are governed by the non-profit law, and the assets of the church or the assets of a non-profit don't belong to any individual. So when there's a misappropriation of the assets that don't belong to an individual, the way it's going to be handled under the law is completely different. But it cannot be swept under. And one thing we need to let our members know is that any member of our church that signs up to serve on the board of a parish has exposed himself to many things. So you have become like a whistleblower to some extent with this thing. So you need to know what you are signing for. You are not just becoming a board member because you are a deacon or pastor likes you and all those things. You have to know the extent of your liability. Because when it comes to fraud, the state is not going to deal with the man that preached last Sunday. It's going to deal with the board. And the law is going to take its course. So as much as possible, let's put our house in order. Let's put internal control systems in order, in place, such that the pastor is not the one carrying the checkbook of the church all over the place and preaching on the altar. No, there must be segregation of duties. The people that are handling the treasury should be different from the people that are taking account of the bookkeeping. And they must be different from the people that are lodging the treasury. And they must be different from the people that are reporting the financial activities of the church. So when these things are in place and anybody investigates any misappropriation, it saves the church 70% of the trouble, because they know that you have an internal control system in place. But a situation where the pastor is the bookkeeper, is the treasurer, is the reporter, is everything, you already expose yourself to suspicion. So everyone must first put the house in order. You must have a policies and procedures manual in every parish that guides the activities of the finance department, so that not just anybody can do anything. And whatsoever you cannot do internally, you can seek for help within the zone, within the province. Knowledge is power. Help you to put things in place. But we need to let our people know that fraudulent activities, whether in a for-profit or a non-profit, is a no-no in this country.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Zero tolerance to fraudulent activity. Big issue. I'm not going to say more than that. I would like it, I just pass it on to my co-host, Pastor Bome, to continue from this point.
Thank you very much, Pastor Fatokun. And next question I would now like to ask Pastor Kunle. And this is alluding from the chat from our YouTube and Facebook. Basically, Pastor Kunle, financial regulations vary from country to country. What are the common denominations, regardless of the country, that we should sort of consider when we're looking at creating funding for the different churches? Pastor Kunle.
I didn't get the question very well.
Yes, so the question is, because we know that we have so many of the countries logged in, and we're having the chat asking for how does it apply to those who are not in the US or those who are not in Canada. And we understand that financial regulations vary from one country to another country. So what are the common denominations, regardless of the country, that we can speak to? While you're answering that, I also would like to ask the question that, there's that challenge that a lot of people face, especially the corporate, the corporate body faces the central office when it comes to over-reliance. So when some parishes want to build or they want to embark on a new project, they write letters to the central office. Some actually even go to rccgna.org, get all the addresses there, and write letters to every single parish that is in that state. Now, what are the expectations from the central office that has been set in the Americas? Should those be reviewed? Should those be maintained? And is it unfair if we say that the central office should prioritize their assistance? And when we're talking about the central office, because we are now the Americas, how does this apply to even the central office for other countries within the Americas?
Thank you. I believe the policy of each country should remain within the confines of the country. But if I'm going to answer the question as regards the expectation of the parishes from the central office, I really don't know what the individual parishes expect from the central office. But what they are entitled to should be very, very clear to each of the parishes from the onset. You should know what your expectations are from the central body. Where I find a lot of people, where we all get a lot of letters, is when people are trying to build. And statistically, it's been shown that only between 4 and 5% of them get any reply from anybody at all, if at all. So it's not the most productive approach. I believe that for a lot of churches, if you really want to build, or you want to remodel your churches, and you don't want to be under stress, particularly the pastors, you should pre-qualify yourself to determine the type of building that you can afford based on your income, without independent of what you might get from the central office. You must first of all pre-qualify yourself for what you are able to build, or else it will be an ongoing stress while you are trying to meet your payment. And see, the ability to pay should, like I said, be totally independent of outside help. Outside help may come, but you cannot add it to part of your budget. This is what we do when we want to build or buy our own homes. We pre-qualify ourselves, and you are qualified based on your income, not on the income you might get or you might be given by an outside body. Even when your young adults, when let's say you have a rich parent and your child is going to buy a home, they are not still qualified based on what their parents will give them. As a matter of fact, both parents can give $30,000 a year as a gift that is tax-free. So what I'm saying in essence is that you cannot base your construction or your future project on what you expect to get from the central office. If the central office has a fixed amount, let's say for every building they give $10,000, then that is a qualified income. You can add that to your income when you are pre-qualifying yourself. But that's for you to now base your abilities to build on something that is projected, it's going to lead you to never pre-qualify yourself based on promises. That's what I'm saying. And that will give you and your church a bit of peace.
You're muted.
Thank you, Pastor Kunle. And this next question is from our platform. I would now like to pass this question to Pastor Omo before I hand it over to my co-anchor. Now, Pastor Omo, what are the pastors in Central and South America and the Caribbean, what are they supposed to expect in their financial support system, being the SATCO in charge of welfare?
Oh, well, we're looking seriously into the central office is looking towards a support system for our pastors in the Central and in the South American parishes. We already have some things in place that the central office has put in place as far as benefits are concerned. I want to get your question clear. Are you talking about the pastors or are you talking about the churches? So I can address it appropriately.
Preferably the churches.
Okay. So I guess the same thing that applies to all the other churches in the other nations also applies to South America and Central America churches. And of course, we all have a pool from where we are able to be supported by our central office. And that has to do, just like we talk about processes and procedures, we have those things that guide us too as a church, as a denomination, and for which we require compliance, at least to some extent. So those are the things that speak to a lot of the provisions that we get, because that is the pool that the central office also pulls from. And so things like our remittances, as a church, there are things that we expect that are obligations that churches also have to meet. And based on those obligations, the central office is able to rise up, just like every other parish in the Americas, to meet all the needs of our remittances nation, and for which we require compliance, at least to some extent. So those are the things that speak to a lot of the provisions that we get, because that is the pool that the central office also pulls from. And so things like our remittances, as a church, there are things that we expect that are obligations that churches also have to meet. And based on those obligations, the central office is able to rise up, just like every other parish in the Americas, to meet all the needs across the board.
Thank you very much, Ma. And with that said, I would now like to pass it on to Pastor Fatokun for the next question. Pastor Fatokun.
Thank you so much, Pastor Bumi, and thank you so much for the panelists. Now, I'm just going to ask a quick question when it comes to financial development. Some of our pastors have challenges when it comes to business acumen, our ability to handle financial matters varies across the board. Some take bad loans, some make financial decisions that are not appropriate and have brought a lot of challenges to the church itself. My question is, what are some of the options available for the pastors within the Americans to build knowledge when it comes to business operation? And where can they, what kind of training is available to pastors starting parishes, or that needs to update their knowledge when it comes to business decision, business operations, and other? I'd like to invite your opinion on that, Pastor Emmanuel Adewale.
Thank you very much, sir. I think RLI will be a very go-to place for me, first of all. I did the Run Church with them some time ago, and I thought that was very useful. And I know they have a whole lot of different trainings, and with the pandemic, I think the options have even increased in terms of how you can take the classes. I think they have some Zoom classes also that people can take now. So I think that from our own organization standpoint would be very good. I don't know how much of financial training is with the Bible College. Maybe there's something in the seminary. Maybe there's something there too. I would also add to it that we can leverage books, pastors, ministers conference like this one. There are so many of them that happen every year. In fact, I think as a pastor or leader of a church, we should have in our plans for the year how do we want to develop ourselves, because you see, aside from the fact that you want to even be able to handle the books well, you also want to be able to help your people, because when it comes to financial knowledge, it's not only for handling of the books. There are people that will be within and I still get their newsletter pretty often. It's called Start Church. It's one word, Start Church. You know, it's usually for people that are starting out, and there are so many podcasts out there, you know. Just like when people go on YouTube and search for music to listen to, you could also search for resources to help you learn about finances.